To the racks every week, keep craving that rush that you get when you flip to the next page. Life is better when you're living between Wednesdays. Yes, got a massive back.
What's up, folks? I'm your host Konrad on Wednesday Night Reviews, and I'm joined tonight by Robert Garcia, and we're going to talk about their new comic, Retribution. Robert, thanks for coming on the show.
Hey, Konrad, nice to meet you. Nice to be on Wednesday Night Review. Nice to be talking to you.
Thank you kindly. So, Robert, just to jump right into it, for the folks out there in YouTube land who've maybe never seen your face, never heard your name, who is Robert Garcia?
I'm a small town Mexican boy.
Fair.
I'm a guy actually from a small town out in West Texas. I'm currently living in Austin, Texas now. I am somebody who's worked in the media, spent time as a crime reporter throughout the Southwest, working in Tucson, El Paso, Austin, covering, just crime throughout all those different areas. I am an ex-writer in the sports genre. I used to do a lot of stuff in sports, but now I am writing Retribution. This is a story that I had in my head for about 10, 15 years when I was working in the media as a reporter. It covered a lot of what I saw as a crime reporter. Also covered a lot of what I experienced, not only personally, but through friendships and all that, just about the things that I saw growing up. But I'm just a guy who likes comics, actually loves comic art. Always been a fan of comic art, and was writing this book and decided, hey, you know what? I'm going to turn this into a comic. And it's a little bit of a background on me. Bilingual, speak English, Spanish, like most people do along the border of Texas and Mexico. So that's a little bit about me. How about you? How about what's on your wall? I'm sitting here trying to see what the CGC ratings are there, because I see Dark Knight and I'm like, oh man, I'm totally loving what you got up on the wall there.
Thank you. You know what? I'm always happy to give a shout out. Let's make sure to pull my audio out here. So the CGC, so I've got 9.4 for Dark Knight. The Unsacred #1's a 9.8. It was like a signed thing a dear friend got for me. And then the Batman 608 reprint is another 9.8. That was one of those, they do the McFarlane run thing. They put it out and the CGC people. And then these are all basically the other comics are ones that I either love or people I've interviewed. So you can kind of not see it because the lighting, but that's Tights. I can tell. Yeah, from Chris Wygand, Commander Rao on the end here from Fellhound. Not yet picked up, but Jonathan, I'm going to say his name wrong and I'm so sorry. Jonathan Koisuba created this comic here. Loverman. I just happen to like Batman, One Bad Day, Mr. Freeze. Bouncy Ball Man, #1 here, where again you can't see it because the lighting. Actually, you can kind of see it just above my pinky. That's me. I'm actually on the cover. They actually Bouncy Ball Man 2 and 3 is on Kickstarter. It'll be done by the time this gets out, but they actually just passed their funding goal earlier today.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool.
And then there's Sidekick for Hire, which I believe their Kickstarter's on now for their last bit of it. I happen to love Coda. And then this comic here, and all the way to here, is The Gathering Place, written by Nelson Caetano, he's an educator here in the Toronto area. And these are basically all comics, and I highly recommend yourself. I think you'll like them, actually, Robert. These are all anthology type books that tell you the history of different Canadian comics creators. So there's in the first one here, there's Joe Shuster in it. And the really cool thing is it's all done by Nelson, and he draws in their style for their story. So he's very flexible artistically. It's super cool. And my last two are Crown and Anchor and Emulator, which are done by the writer on both of them is Tobin Rasico, and on Crown and Anchor, his partner she actually does the art as well. It's Alaire. I Joe, and I feel really bad, but on emulator I don't remember the artist's name. For all I know, it could be Alaire, but I believe it's somebody else. But yeah, so this is my wall of comics. I like to change it up, but generally speaking, if you've been on my show, your comic is going on this wall. One day, hopefully...
We'll have to send it out to you then. We got to send it out to you.
I would love.
And I've got to read Batman Clayface One Bad Day. I got that, and I've heard just crazy reviews about it. And I've been so lazy lately, I haven't read it, and where is it at? It's right over here. Hold on. Let me reach around here. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
And I feel horrible because I haven't read it yet, and I got the little alternate cover here.
Ooh, nice.
But I heard this is just awesome. I've just heard great reviews about that story, and so I've got to read that one. And I think I've got Batman One Bad Day with some Catwoman. And maybe I did get Mr. Freeze. I'm not sure, but I haven't. I've been really bad about reading. And for somebody who's trying to sell a comic book and get people to read mine, I'm like the worst reader ever. But I love what Chip Zdarsky's doing right now with Batman, so I'm reading his run. I'm behind about 3 comics right now, and then I saw this Clayface, saw an interview with the writers, and just wanted to jump on there and get that going. So hopefully I get these things read within like the next couple of weeks and add some more fuel to the fire up in the brain.
Hell yeah. You know what? The One Bad Day, I haven't seen, or haven't read rather, the Two-Face, the Riddler and all that. Mr. Freeze, Clayface, I haven't read this yet, but Catwoman I read, Freeze I read. They're really cool. They generally are like a retelling of sort of the origin or a critical day for that character. The Catwoman one I found really cool. I'm now pumped to read this because I'm a huge fan of Clayface. Another one, if I might be so bold, if you haven't read yet, GCPD The Blue Wall.
Oh, wow.
This is one of the... I've been collecting comics myself since 2011, and I find now that I've been reading in religiously so, I haven't missed an issue of Batman or Detective since then, since the New 52. I've read enough Batman now that I'm like, I'm seeing like the cyclical pattern of DC's continuity, and it's like, it's a bit of a bummer, but I still love the stories they come out with. So it's like, you know, this comic, however, totally different angle, different type of story. Basically, it's about fresh, brand new officers of the GCPD. So these people have literally come out of the academy, and they're going into their roles. One's a beat cop, one is a parole officer, and the other is a prison guard. And it's just about the weird stuff they go through. So highly recommended.
Cool.
Yeah. And don't feel bad about being 3 comics behind. I am many comics behind on Batman. I actually have Detective from the last 8 issues lined up to read.
I don't want to tell Tom Taylor. No. We just talked about this. Is it Tom Taylor who's doing Nightwing?
Tom Taylor, yep.
Mucho, which means a lot, comics behind on his run. And I'm actually behind on Daredevil, which Zdarsky is going to, I think it's wrapping up in the next couple of months. He's going to be done with Daredevil. And I've loved his run. Just like it's that style of writing. Well, you know, it's weird I say that style of writing because I mean I like Frank Miller and I like, you know, it's just like what I'm trying to do with my own comic. I like gritty. I like things that you can try to make as real as possible. I mean, we're talking about a superhero or you know a comic type of world, but things that just you know seem more in touch with you know our feelings with what goes on around us, what we experience, and so on. But yeah, a lot of reading to do. Embarrassingly.
No, it's never a bad thing. I mean, hell, I have a short box plus this to read, so don't you worry.
Yeah.
And plus, you're busy creating your own comic. And I know for a fact, getting it sold, getting it out there, getting it kickstarted, it's a job in and of itself once the thing is actually created. Yeah. So yeah, your comic, Retribution, you've provided me with the first 2 issues, so I'm sure there are ways for people out there to get it. You're kickstarting issue number 3. Is it just going to be issue 3, or are you doing like 3, 4, and another, or is it?
So what I'm doing is a little bit different. So basically, I've been at this for the last couple of years. We released chapter 1 in October of 21. I want to say, what was it? Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to remember. And then, and since then, yeah, just the whole process of trying to put this together, and especially, I have big OCD issues. Okay, I'll just be blunt like that. As we talked about a little bit, one of the things that I just fell in love with comics for was the artwork, and all different types of styles of art. Right now, like Jorge Jimenez, I love. Joel Jones. I mean, there's so many different people who I could sit here and talk about that. Just all the different art styles. But for me, my goat growing up, I'm a little bit older, is going to be Walt Simonson. And my true love of comics started with Walt Simonson's Thor run. And I was about to say, I got my CGC in my closet.
Yeah.
Came back in 9.4. I couldn't cry more because I've had that issue for, man, what is it, for like 30 years? Maybe how long has it been? It came out, was I think in the 80s. But anyway, so that is my true comic passion. That's where it really kicked in. It was with Walt Simonson and that Thor run, because I love the story. I love the story about a young man trying to fill in the shoes of his father, but yet not equally agreeing with the way his father, made those shoes, and how he goes about his life and so on, and the arrogance of being a god, and how he behaved and so on. And then obviously the creation of Beta Ray Bill. And so I was really into that. And obviously back then, X-Men, Spider-Man, all the different comics that you read, I liked all those runs. I'm a huge Todd McFarlane fan. I just love his artwork. Love his artwork. And so one of the things that I really wanted to accomplish with Retribution is I've always viewed comics as more of a visual medium than a written medium. And it sounds crazy, but I think the artwork has to be something that's just like next level. Okay, and that's one of the things that we did with the first one. This is the first copy of Retribution. I'm going to try to get it without any kind of shine on there. And it's interesting because you're up in Canada, and my artist Julia Gulazzi, who is from Italy, actually worked for Lev Gleason, who is part of, used to be Charterhouse Comics. Now it's like Charter Comics. They do Captain Canuck. They do that run. So a nice little Canada tie-in there. And so she illustrated for them. And like, I'm going to cry like a proud papa right now, because she actually now is doing artwork for both Marvel and for... is it Boom? I think Boom or Image. And it's insane. Like, that's if awesome. You look at that first comic, yeah, her artwork is just bonkers. A lot of the variant covers that we did, I did too many variant covers. Like I'm a variant cover like whore. I mean, seriously, I buy so many variant covers. Like I love variant covers. So like my variant covers feature Kevin Keane, who 3 years ago was this awesome black and white artist that you've got to find on Instagram. It's just, at Kevin Keane. And he now does covers for Todd McFarlane and Spawn. He does Spawn. He does Gunslinger Spawn. He's done a bunch of covers for Gunslinger Spawn. He's done Scorched. He's done King Spawn. And so Kevin's just like super busy. Well, Kevin illustrated part of the second book, and it's a little bit different artwork. And I should have the comic in front of me, but of course I'm not prepared. But Kevin did the artwork inside along with Julia, and he also does all my variant covers. Oh, interesting. And so, really long story, trying to make a real short point, is that the artwork is just bombastic. I've had Kath Lobo, who works for Boom and who does DC stuff. She's done some variant covers for me. I have just tried to really go out and just find these incredible artists. And I'm not going to lie, it's not cheap. I mean, when you're paying people who are just, off the chain, just crazy good artists, it makes this whole process go a lot slower because you're raising funds. You're out in the street begging for money from people. And that's what we're doing now. We're begging people to support the Kickstarter, which launches March 21st on Kickstarter. Retribution, Chapter 3, The Abyss. We need your money. I can't sell another kidney. I've gone down to one. Okay. I can maybe cough up a lung and sell that, but I want to keep this run going because it has received great feedback. I've done Comic Cons, Houston Comic Palooza. I've done some other Comic Cons, and just the greatest feeling is when somebody walks by your booth and they're just like, whoa, when they see your comic because of the artwork and because of what's going on with it. And that's what I really wanted to establish. And that's just the biggest attribute of this comic is if you don't like the story, you're still getting incredible artwork from people who are starting to move up in the artwork world of the comic industry with Marvel, with Image, with Boom and other companies.
Absolutely.
Sorry, I made myself stop talking. I was just babbling on, so I stopped. Jump in, Konrad. I'll never shut up.
No, you know what? You're totally good, and you're correct. On a number of points. So one, the art in Retribution, the first issue I've got my copies up here, is absolutely fantastic. I think mentioning McFarlane earlier, it definitely conjures up the correct type of imagery, because the art in the first issue of Retribution, certainly the extremely heavy blacks, the level of like organic curvy lines, grimy detail that you see in the characters absolutely lends itself to not early Spawn, but like, I guess I want to say like somewhere between Capullo's work and the next artist they had on there. Like it's extremely
Capullo's phenomenal.
Oh yeah, he's amazing. Yeah. The comic itself is fantastic, and I agree. There's something about art in the comic sphere that I think it leads the way. And I think for me personally, like, I don't think I've ever really talked about this. But for me personally, put my little flag in the ground here. I agree with you where the art is almost the more important aspect, at least to catch the eye. So for instance, like, a lot of people will know the art and will picture this once they say it, but the Batman Year One art done by, and I'm totally blanking on his name.
I know, me too.
But it's fantastic.
Batman Year One.
Yeah, let me Google it.
Google it.
David Mazzucchelli. That's his name.
Yeah, Mazzucchelli. Mazzucchelli, and
so good.
Sorry, I in my head I was like, he's gonna be at some Comic Con because I follow him.
Is he?
I just forgot where. I forgot where it is. I'd have to look at Insta, but yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I wholeheartedly agree with you because that's what I really wanted to hit on. And you've got one of the people up on the wall who was also a very big influence as to the artistic style, and that's Frank Miller, Sin City. I am somebody who loves black and whites. Okay, I am black and white photos, black and white artwork, and black and white comics. And it's funny because when I started this, when I had this idea, we're going back now almost 4 years ago, because it's a process, man. I mean, he's going through there, writing it, going through artists. I went through 4 artists before I finally found Julia. I mean, it is, you go and take all these steps just to get that first one launched and have a successful Kickstarter and then do the cons and so on. But I wanted something gritty. I wanted something dirty. That's really what I wanted this comic, because focusing on the story now, which hopefully is a story that's well written, that captivates and gets the mind working. The story is based a lot on what I experienced as a crime reporter, what I experienced as a child, what others around me have experienced when it comes to trauma, and I just say trauma in every aspect. The book's called Retribution because it's about trying to find a retribution for all these different type of traumas that I've seen throughout life, I've experienced in life, and so on. The book itself right now is based throughout the southwest part of Texas, or basically, just throughout the whole southwest part of the country, going from like Arizona all the way to South Texas. It's going to grow and evolve from that. But it also ties in my love of the desert Southwest, and it ties in all these areas that I've gone throughout my life. I have like my own photos I've taken, and we're having the right now Scott Oakley's working on the comic and having him illustrate these things that I've seen in my life and making them part of the background, because I want to add this gritty artistic beauty to the comic. Something that just really stands out, and for people who've been in these areas will be able to, oh, actually, I know what that is. I know what that is, and so on. And hopefully other people who haven't been there will see, okay, these are these areas out in, Southwest Texas. Like No Country for Old Men is where a lot of this was filmed, out in Marfa, Texas, which is where a lot of movies get filmed. But it's just a story of a guy who led pretty much a horrendous life, and just went through a lot. He has this person who is almost like a gift from God who's in his life, and she's, accepted him for who he is, what he is, and so on. And the comic starts right off with his rebirth, because sadly she's been killed. And we start going into the story about this rebirth that he's brought back as this machine, basically, as and I don't mean machine like literal machine, but he's brought back as this vessel of retribution for what has happened to her. And then as we start breaking down the layers of the story, we start realizing, and he starts realizing that, hey, A, this isn't all that it's cracked up for, and B, we start doubting what is that true purpose that he was, brought back for. Issue one's called Purpose, and it just focuses on that new purpose, coming out of that rebirth. I always tell people it's kind of like the Crow in a sense, but just really different in the fact that there's no bird flying around. It's not tied into religion. It's if anything, it has a sci-fi turn that now that we're hitting chapter 3 and chapter 4 and chapter 5, where the story really starts to explode and everything comes to light. There's just a lot of things that just end up happening, and he starts to realize what's going on. And then at that point, that's when those questions, those moral decisions that you've got to make in life start to come out. And the biggest thing is, for somebody who's gone through so much trauma, who's so fractured in who he is, how is he going to handle himself once he finds out that truth?
Excuse me. I couldn't agree more. Like, it's one of the things that when I was reading through the first 2 issues that got me was in Purpose, the first issue, as our Retribution is coming to, he's beginning to click and realize, he's not dead. And he's checking out his body and, getting his bearings, as he starts telling us or thinking about, I don't want to make sure I'm saying this right. I've been saying it Chai. Is that how you pronounce it?
Chi.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So as he's thinking about Chi, it definitely reminded me of The Crow, where, the tragic story of the couple killed, the boyfriend comes back to seek vengeance, and The Crow goes in a very different direction, which, again, if you haven't read The Crow, please do. Fantastic.
Yeah, great. Yeah. Great book, great movie.
Oh.
Second one, so. First one, awesome.
Yeah. But what
remake, we don't know.
Yeah, are they doing that? I hope.
Yeah. There's a new one going to be coming out.
Okay. What I found interesting is, as I read it, right, and we get to see what R does, where he's going out and basically finding these really not great people, much like The Crow, and basically taking vengeance out on them, or punishment, however you want to call it. When she came into the mix more and started to be like, oh, hey, we need to go here. And as I got into chapter 2 of it, or issue 2, she doesn't tell him a lot, right? And like, my brain automatically went, oh, she's going to be like a guardian angel. She's going to help him seek out bad people. They'll get revenge, which is what he kind of expects. And all of a sudden, she's just like, no, we're going to actually go get this next guy. And I'm like, this feels, now it's like, oh, this is like Spawn. This is like a guy who's just a puppet to a higher power. And it was interesting. And I also thought the visual of how R works is fascinating, especially with, when he kills the people that he kills and he goes after them and he, absorbs their blood, whatever it is he does. I found that fascinating. So can you speak a little bit about R's situation, and just sort of explain that way the folks out there can sort of understand?
Yeah, so it's very interesting because, again, what I always try to tell people, especially when I meet them at cons and all that, and I try to give them a quick synopsis, is that this is seriously just your average day person. You can put him somewhere mid-20s, but a guy that has experienced so much trauma, a guy that's had this fractured mind. I mean, truly has a fractured mind, and now he's brought back as this entity, and he doesn't have any idea of like what he cannot do, and so on. So we're just going through this learning process. The one thing that she has revealed to him is basically everything is through his mind and his hands. So, I mean, it's not like I'm shooting laser beams that I'm doing this and that. I mean, it's a simple, and that's one of the things too, that I love stories that are just very simplistic, like just because then you can get so much depth in that simplicity, I mean, it's something that I'm really going for here. And so R at this point now is starting to figure out what's happening. And basically, as you see, like that absorption, like as you talked about with the blood, is that it's not about stealing souls and this and that, but just basically, I would say that, what's the word I want to use here? I'm blanking on it. That's why I'm trying to figure out the word. He's basically, pulling out what that person is. Like he's their energy, their chi, their whatever it may be. He basically absorbs that into his body once he's taken care of his victims, and he gets that, and he talks about how he feels, this rush, almost like somebody, I hate to say it, it's somebody shooting up or something. It's like all of a sudden he feels this rush afterwards, and again that creates another dilemma, because here we have somebody who has very questionable abilities to handle his own mental status, and now he's being influenced by these other things that are coming in from the outside. So throughout the story, the way he has to go about his business is he has to make contact with his victims. And that's at this point, that's what he's learning, and he's kind of learning his powers, and he's learning what they do to him and how they further empower him to be able to continue on down his path. And so that's one of the things that I really wanted to tie in here is, I guess, essence. That's the word I wanted to say. He basically absorbs the essence of that person that he's dealing retribution out to, and it's basically that simple. And it's about contact, and it's about what he wants to do to them, what he wants them to experience, what he wants them to feel once he gets a hold of that victim, and once he does, and at that point, whatever he's thinking, whatever he wants to do, translates and happens to his victim.
Fascinating. This is one of the cool things about doing what I do and getting to talk to the people is what I pick up out of just reading it and looking at it, and the more detailed and thoughtful explanations. I always love this personally. I also wanted to then talk and touch on his design. So R, from like the physical look, he's like a pale version of Deadpool. It's the simplest explanation I can give it. He's all, like, from what I understand, I picture him literally all white, and he's got black around his eyes, and he's got kind of a Deadpool-like mask, except his teeth do come through. That's where it's like a mix of Spawn and Deadpool. Again, I'll have images up so people can see it, but that's kind of how I picture him. And
yeah.
And having the explanation you've just given, where he's taking on people's essence as he dispatches them in various horrifying ways, I think him being a blank canvas is interesting. Can you talk about sort of his visual design?
The visual design, Deadpool wasn't one of them, but I like the comparison. One of the big things, and this is funny because two things tie into this. I'm like, hey, here we go. I don't know what I'm doing here with my hands. First off, as I talked about, with the artistic aspects of it, when I was first developing this character, I had in my mind, I had always drawn this like little design on people's faces, and it's almost Two-Face-ish in a sense. But I wanted, like good and bad, yin and yang, and that's kind of like why half of his face is a darker shade than the other half. Okay. Mm-hmm. And so you also see that he's got scars and scratches all over his forearms and his arms.
Wait.
That's because in his previous life as a human, through his trauma, what he went through, he was what's called a cutter. And a cutter are people who tend to be somewhat suicidal or feel like the only way they can feel emotion or they want to let out that emotion is by cutting themselves. So these scars that he had as a human have now, like, if anything, magnified and become more visual and more grotesque as he's become this entity. And he is half alien, half human. And the alien aspect is going to be, revealed more in these next couple of chapters. Okay. I don't want to give too much away with it.
Yeah, please don't. No spoilers. Yeah.
It was basically, I looked at like Silver Surfer. You look at Spawn, you look at these characters. I mean, what you see is what he is. There is no costume. I mean, this is a guy who's walking around butt naked. Okay. But he lost certain aspects of his humanity. So we're not going into we're not seeing what's his name? I just lost his name. Mr. Deadpool? No, I'm thinking of, and I love the movie. And he was in a blank out. I love the TV show too, with the blue guy with his wiener hanging out throughout the whole movie.
Oh, Dr. Manhattan.
Yeah, Dr. Manhattan. There you go. We're not doing a Dr. Manhattan.
I love that
R is going to walk around
hanging out.
Yeah, we're not going to have an issue with R running around with his penis hanging out. Okay, so it's like penis is gone, and he even makes a reference about that in the first chapter. Like, I'm not really what I used to be before, and that's the thing. He's so guided early on in this process, and that's what I wanted this story to be as natural as possible. Because if you and I, Konrad, if you and I are put in this situation, nobody just comes out and, hey, I'm going to go fight and I'm going to go kill and I've got all these great skills. It's like, what the hell am I? And you're trying to figure out your process, and it's about you're trying to figure out who you are, what you are, how do you handle these things, how do I handle, what are my abilities, what can I do, and so on. And I think that's part of like what he's going through here in regards to this physique that he has now, because in the comics I would say he's about 6'4". In real life he was like about 5'10", so obviously a big growth spurt there. And physically he will continue to evolve throughout this comic series, and again that will be also explained as well. He's got markings on him, not just like the cutter markings, but he's got markings from conditions that he had in his human life. He had alopecia. He had this. I mean, there's just other things that factor into it. And then obviously the alien creatures that created him, he has a lot of what they are in him as well. And that again will be revealed more and more. And I'll say the aliens that he is, are creatures that, I mean, really, if you look at science, have been around for millions and millions of years. So it just ties into that depth into it. Yeah. And there's just a lot that's just being, layered into it. And I've kept the first two issues real simple. I understand comics. I understand arcs. I understand what everybody wants, but what I try to tell people is that I'm trying to be more of a storyteller with this, like really just, give this literation of this process that this person's going through, the challenges that he experiences early on, and then the decisions that he has to make once he's starting to figure out who he is, what's his true purpose, why was he brought back, and then go from there.
I think that is very well executed so far in the first two issues. You've mentioned a fourth and fifth issue, and given your previous work experience, how well this turned out, I'm certain they will come out quite good. I guess one thing I wanted to, there's a lot of things I want to ask now. We'll start with this. So R, when he comes to, like I said, he almost immediately after he gets his bearings refers to Chi. Can you talk about in life, well, I guess he's alive, but in human life, what Chi was to him, and then maybe touch on their relationship afterward?
Yeah, I mean, so Chi was home. It was the first time in his life that he felt any kind of safety, any kind of assurance, any kind of like love that was accepting of like who he was. This is a character that, as we continue to evolve through the story, we're going to find out more and more. I like doing the flashbacks. We did the flashbacks in chapter 2, and he talks a little bit about her. But just the fact that, here's a kid, like, as I mentioned, had a troubled life, lost his parents, didn't have a dad. Dad was never around, but, lost his mom when he was younger. And then at that point, just has always just had this sensation of being alone and not having a true sensation of any kind of purpose. And that was why the first issue was called Purpose, because it's kind of something that he has to figure out what is that purpose moving forward. But anyway, he is just a character that's lost. And then here he finds this person who is, the utmost of, generosity, of love, of acceptance. She in her former life, was a therapist, a counselor, and somebody that had worked with him and had helped heal a lot of the wounds that he went through. And as you see, once he is now brought back and he's working with Chi, a lot of what was there is no longer there. And now he, as you see in issue 1 and 2, he's seeing a cold, almost callous version of her. And he's trying to figure out, is that because of what was been done to her? Is that, she doing this because she has to do this? He's going through discovery, trying to figure out, who is Chi now? And will he ever kind of get back to like what they had before? Because again, there's a there's a reason, and in the first issue it talks about that he agreed to this. He agreed to to come back. So this was something that was offered to him. It wasn't something like he was brought back without a choice. He was brought back and he agreed to it. And obviously he agreed to it because he's thinking, I'm going to get back what I lost. And sometimes when you get something back, it's not what it used to be.
Interesting. I love that. I guess an important thing that we've got to talk about, because we've been chatting for like 35 minutes. Which
Sorry.
Totally no, do not apologize. It's fantastic, and this is why I do this. Because I think it's extremely important to. It's one thing to say, hey, here's this cool comic, I think you should support it. And it's another thing to be able to go, hey, here's Robert, here's his mentality, here's why he's making this comic, his approach to it, all this fascinating stuff, and how it's made this wicked comic. An important part of that process, though, is people getting the comic. So as you mentioned, March 21st, you're launching the Kickstarter. Is that correct?
Yeah, launching on Kickstarter March 21st. The Kickstarter itself is going to have issue 3. Issue 3 is 32 pages. It really starts to just ramp up that friction between R and Chi, and him trying to figure out what am I really doing here, and him trying to figure out now who am I now. So that's going to be up on the Kickstarter. But what I did too is I went back and I looked at chapter 1 and 2. And with the last Kickstarter, I sold issue 1. You could also buy issue 2. I'm going to have some physical copies that I still have left of issues 1 and 2. One, because as I mentioned, I love variant covers, and I just did way too many of them. So I do have some. So if people want to add on a back issue, they can. But I'm also introducing my first graphic novel. So for people who've missed a series at this point, I'm going to have a graphic novel that's going to have all 3 issues. And the cool thing is, we're changing things up with it. If you notice, just some of the fonts, some of the things, because my love of comic art first told me that I wanted to have a different artist on every issue. And at this point, I've got Scott Oakley, who is an artist out of England, who is at Scott Oakley on Instagram, has a huge following. He is putting out his own big sci-fi comic book called Bolaro, which just looks bonkers. It looks insane. He's right now at his stage, he's illustrating comics, but he's also a character creator. He's worked for some big companies that I can't divulge. I love saying that. It makes it seem like he's so cool.
It is cool. It is cool.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, when I found out, I was like, man, dude, you're so cool. Like, all my artists are doing awesome stuff. That's all I can promise you. Okay, like all these people, and I say I own them. But the people who I've been able to develop relationships with, and I did this all through Instagram, which is the indie comic industry on Instagram is phenomenal. Anyway, these people are just blowing up, and it scares me because I'm like, okay, there's only so much I can pay, so I may have to go find other artists because these people are becoming like too high for me. But anyway, so on the Kickstarter, you'll be able to get the graphic novel, which is going to include artwork. It's going to include a lot of the those variant covers throughout it. It's probably going to be like more than 100 pages.
Nice.
It'll have all 3 issues. It'll be what I call a tightened up version of all 3 issues. So it'll be a little bit different than issues 1 and 2. Okay, there's some tweaks that I've made. With the lettering, because I handle all the lettering. So there's tweaks with the lettering. There's even tweaks with a little bit of dialogue. Doesn't change a whole bunch, but it just things that I decided to tighten it up a little bit to really, put out this product that I hope people, are really, really going to enjoy. You'll be able to add on, as I mentioned, some of the previous comics if you wanted to get a cover. We always do prints. The first 50 backers are going to get a special little gift that I do every single time I do. First 50 backers are going to receive something. And I'm always about artwork. I love artwork. So I've got three little cool things that I'm going to give to the first 50 backers of the Kickstarter, which again launches March 21st on Kickstarter. So we've got that. We've got stickers. And then what we're doing this time around too is everybody else does it. So I'm like, I need to do what other people do because they're successful. We are going to offer up a slot for somebody to get tied into the comic. So if we're going to have a tier to where if you want to be illustrated in the comic, you want to be somebody, in there, we're going to reserve. We've got a couple pages that we're going to reserve until the Kickstarter is done, and you're going to be drawn into those pages. So that requires you sending in a headshot and a full body shot. So it's up to you how you feel about that. I would not do it with the way I look, but hopefully you look a lot better than me. But that's one of the things we're going to tie into is bring in a reader into the comic and let them become part of this world. And the cool thing also, I forgot to mention with chapter 3, is now we start introducing new characters, because first couple issues, he's gone out there, he's got this retribution, and as these death toll numbers start to tally up, and especially the way these deaths start to happen, obviously eyeballs are going to open. And we've got this cool character. His name's Mateo, and I always kind of tell people, think kind of like Billy from Predator, and the first Predator. Billy.
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah. So Billy is a detective that works out of like the Midland, Odessa area of Texas. And he kind of catches on because I'm trying not to give up too much, but there's so many reasons. There's so many layers. Because right now in my head, this first storyline is going to be anywhere from 8 to 10 books, as long as I can keep churning them out, as long as people keep back on the Kickstarters. But I'm not lying. I mean, sometimes I'm like, man, I think I can do like 20 books. There's so much information in my head. There's so much that I can do with the sci-fi aspect of it and just with the backdrop of these stories. So Mateo is going to be a big central character, big character to the central aspect of the story moving forward from here on out. And there's other characters that are going to pop in because, again, it's kind of hard to go out there and just annihilate a lot of people and not have anybody notice.
Yeah.
So we tie that reality into it, People start to take footnote, and he is somebody who I would say in a way has some previous experience with what he's seeing here.
Fascinating. I dig that. Also, I'm loving the throwback to Billy from Predator. It's probably not a good thing, but as a kid, I absolutely loved that film.
Great movie.
But Predator itself, Prey, actually the newest one, loved that.
I like Prey a lot.
Yeah, Billy, excited to see your take on it. So
great character. Well, he's Billy-ish, okay?
Billy-esque. Yeah.
Yes, Billy-esque. There you go.
That's awesome. Then you know what? One thing I like to ask is often people who maybe they've never done Kickstarter before. They're a little afraid. They don't want to risk too much money. They want to make sure they get their book. So a series of questions I like to ask is basically, excuse me, how close to being completed, or is it already completed for issue 3? Is it? When do you suspect? So you're starting at March 21st. So arguably April 20-ish. Yep. It's done. How long after that would people have their copies? And I guess last but not least, and kind of the key one, what is like the minimum buy-in? If you've yet set those prices for just like a digital copy of just the 3rd issue, I suppose if you have all 3 too.
Now you're making me. I have to go check those numbers again. I think what I do with the what is it? It's like $5 or $6 for a digital print. I mean, if you want to read it digitally. Unfortunately, digitally, I won't be offering the graphic novel. The graphic novel is going to be its own deal. So you can get chapter 3, but you wouldn't be able to get the previous chapters on that. But you will be able to get like the most current one. And I'm trying to get to my Kickstarter and I can't. But the cheapest one, I think it's $6, $5 or $6. And that's Beautiful. Just for you to be able to get the digital copy. And the most expensive thing's obviously going to be about $100, and that's going to be be in Retribution. Have your part in
That's
Retribution.
$100 to get drawn into a comic. Yeah. Awesome. People, do it. Links down below. Go.
And as far as where the comic's at, I have to be at the Houston Comic Palooza at the end of May. So it's got to be completed 2 weeks before that so I can have it mailed to me. So it's going to be a quick turnaround because artwork and everything will be completed by the time the Kickstarter is over. I'll be doing the letter literally as a Kickstarter goes. And this is the way I've always tried to do it. I'm doing the lettering. I'm getting everything finalized to send off to the printers. So we are looking to Kickstarter ends at a minimum within a week. It's off to the printers. Printers gets it turned around, gets it back to us hopefully within 2 to 4 weeks. And we can start shipping. We can start selling at the Houston Comic Palooza that I'll be at. And I'm doing the Austin Greater Comic Con here in Austin in June. And then I got to see where else I can go. I've got to find money. I'm going to be digging holes around my neighborhood, seeing if there's any buried money somewhere or something. But yeah, so I do a quick turnaround time. As far as once the Kickstarter ends, everything is usually, my artwork's always complete before the Kickstarter even finishes. So at that point, it's just up to lettering and up to printing.
Awesome. That's what I like to hear. Also, question, your printing house. One, I hope all goes well, that you have zero issues with the print, that the first run is the greatest run. I pray for you. Are you by chance going through Comics Wellspring, or are you using a different? Yeah,
Comics Wellspring. Nice. And I'll be blunt. Okay, first time around it was smooth sailing. Second time around we had hiccups. But the great thing is the people over at Comics Wellspring are just fantastic. They're great to deal with. Pam is my main contact. I bug her. I probably seem like a stalker sometimes, but they do a great job over there at Comics Wellspring. And so they handle the printing of the comic. And knock on wood, I really need everything to be about as perfect as possible because I've got this short window, and I've got to go to Houston with comics in hand so that way we can sell them to the people who are walking down the aisles and are interested in, and especially with the graphic novel because. I think the graphic novel is going to be a really fun get for people. I think there's going to be a lot of art in there, a lot of cool things. So I try to have fun with it.
That's awesome. No, you know what? I actually think that's a really interesting idea to collect it, because a lot of people that do Kickstarters, I see them, especially if it's just their first comic, they're like, oh, this is going to be, the average 5 to 8 issues or whatever. And I'm always like, are you going to do a graphic novel later? And they're like, oh yeah, so we'll do 8 issues and then we'll collect it. And I'm like, that's cool. Some people, they're just like, no, it's just going to be a graphic novel, which presents logistical issues for kickstarting it because that's a lot of work to have to do. So I like that you've mentioned earlier yourself, it potentially is going to be 8 issues. You could probably go more. But in order to get people to have those first 3 issues, here's a collected issue of all those with some extra nice little tidbits in there.
Yep.
Beautiful idea. So kudos. It's also interesting for me personally that you mentioned the first 3 issues, because me being who I am and doing what I do, I hear a lot of people go, oh, your first issue is the key thing to get everyone reading it. And I'm like, it's not though. I know for a fact, a lot of people buy a first issue, they don't buy a second issue. So for me, I've come to the realization of it's a new series, get 3 issues. If it still has you after 3, then you're good. Keep going. So that's a really cool way to collect it, Robert. So just kudos on all ends here.
Yeah, thank you. And that's why I say with that first issue, I mean, there was so much stress and pressure with it, and you want to have these things that just bring people in, and they get their teeth into it, and they're just totally absorbed. But you don't want to give away your whole story in the first issue, And I tell people 3, 4, and 5 Okay, first off, issue 5. So basically, I issue 5 is about 2/3 done. Issue 6 is about 1/3 done. Issue 8, like, I literally have been writing all these different chapters. The way I write, these things come into my mind, story passages, and I go, that's going to fit here. This is going to fit here. It's almost like I've got Legos and I'm building something. But story 5, I mean, it is just flat out bonkers. I mean, it is just insane. And that's the thing. Again, we get back to the point that, what's going to happen with this person morally, ethically. I mean, just every aspect of what happens with R. What does he become? What does he choose to do with the situation that he's been given? And I think the big thing is, as I tell the story, I want people to understand why he's making these choices, because no matter if somebody does something good, no matter if somebody does something bad, I think the biggest thing is trying to understand what are their reasons. Why have they done this? Why have they followed these paths? What brought them to this situation? And, people ask me, is he a good guy? Is he a bad guy? Is he anti-hero? And I say, at this point, he's just R. We have to watch this story develop to see the choices that he makes and see where he goes with this. Because, again, when you're gifted this type of, quote, power and this type of ability, what do you do with it? Superman, Spider-Man, we've all got these little, great comics that have been written that, I get it. And I get the times that they were written. And we're always looking for the truth and justice, but that's not life, Sadly, with my, more than a decade experience of working, prying through all these different places and just seeing some of the things that I see that I would never wish on anybody, because just the nightmares that have been brought back and just the simple things that people do to other people or even to themselves. It's just, it's just something that I wanted to bring more to light. And I'm hoping that's what, the readers get from when they look at this, comic and they follow the story.
That's beautiful. One thing I did want to ask,
yeah,
do feel free to say pass, whatever. Given your history, given the horrifying shit I'm sure you've seen, that, like you said, you don't want anyone else to have to deal with it, and I definitely hope I never do. How has that contributed to or impacted the way that you're telling Retribution? Because, like, the reason I ask is, if you've seen, like most people see the news and they hear about a shooting, and maybe the reporter at the time gets a picture of, like, some poor person who's been shot and they're in the middle of the road or whatever. That's horrifying in and of itself. But compared to some other stuff that's out there on the internet that you can go and dig for, that's, unfortunately and horrifyingly to say, it's tame.
Yeah.
Given that you yourself may have seen some of this stuff firsthand, when you're telling the story of Retribution, like, what is it that you want to impart to the readers, for them to maybe take beyond just the pages of your book?
Well, it's just kind of what we just kind of covered, and that's just an understanding of trauma, an understanding of not only personal traumas, physical traumas, emotional traumas, but how we got there, how people get there, what people are. As you saw in the second issue, there's a victim that people would be like, why in the world would you be killing this person? Because we're looking at somebody who's held in very high authority in society. And as R is killing him, he makes a connection with all his victims. And he decides with this one, he's like, well, because he's playing around, he's trying to figure out his powers, and he makes a little bit of a deeper connection than he thought. And he sees what that person was. And that freaks him out. And it really freaks him out, because in his head, as he tells Chi, like, he learned. He did. He learned what he's doing. Like, he is just sadly continuing a path that he was taught, that he experienced, that he had to go through growing up. And so he's just doing what he knows. And so at that point now, R ethically in his head is just like, okay, well, does that mean, what am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to have some kind of compassion for this person because he's just doing what he knows? Does he still deserve to die? because he's doing something horrible. And so those are the things, is that trying to get a better understanding of just, ourselves as a human race, as a people, what we do. And a lot of what I cover are things that I covered in my history, other things that I also knew about, that I spoke about with other reporters. I always talk about, when it comes to my time covering crime, there's just things that I just, I don't think anybody should ever have to see, or anybody should have to ever deal with, but they're just part of the job. So I'm just trying to get people, I'm trying to like build an understanding. It doesn't mean it's acceptance. It's not about acceptance at all. I think if we do a better job of just trying to learn what we are, what other people, what we are, and then what other people are, and maybe the reasoning behind what they're doing, then, so we get that better understanding of other people, and maybe a better way to communicate with other people or accept other people in life in general. I mean, I'm not trying to write this great story that's going to be, this revelation. It's just what I think, and that's the thing that's kind of interesting with this comic, is that, I've shown it to a couple publishers and this and that. And it was funny because I've had a couple publishers ask me, hey, would you want to write a different type of story for this and that? And not like they didn't like my story, but it was just more about, you've got a lot of knowledge and like what you've got going on here. Would you be interested in doing this? And at this point, like I tell people, I'm just looking to write this story because this is something that I was going to write a book. It's something that I've had built up in my head for a long time. This is kind of a release for me, but it's therapeutic, it's cathartic, it's all those things tied into it. And I hope for the readers, there's a lot of people who can identify with it. And I've gotten that feedback a lot from a lot of people who've read the book. If you go to my Instagram page, Cheesy Comics Shop, and that's with an S, Cheesy Comics Shop, I put up the quotes that I get from people, and I love it. I love when people are like, "Man, something like this will hit way too close to home for me," and so on. And that's what I'm just trying to do, is just build this a better understanding of like who we are and how people handle trauma.
Thank you. I genuinely mean that. As someone who, I'm like many people, I am fascinated with things like crime, true crime. I've studied, like I did a BA in psychology, and we covered criminology and all sorts of stuff like that. It's fascinating, and I appreciate earlier you made a very clear distinction. It's not acceptance, but understanding. You're in a position where frankly, you're an authority figure on this. You've covered it a lot. You've done a lot of reporting on it. And you can definitely shed light on stuff that a lot of people sensationalize, a lot of people are obsessed with, there's countless people into true crime podcasts.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
and you'll have an angle to be able to be like, to tell, I guess, a humanizing story about it rather than this media piece. Also being very aware we are doing this in comic book format, so there's obviously some stuff going on there, but it's fascinating. So I'm very excited.
I just want to say cheers to you, fellow psychology major. So cheers to you.
Thank you.
I honestly, I love the mind. I am. That's part of this too. Is like I've always been fascinated by the mind, how our minds work, what our minds do, how our minds are damaged, when that damage happens in your life, how that damage happens in your life, everything. I've although I minored in business, so it's the business of psychology. No, it's just something that I've always just been fascinated with how things work. The sci-fi aspect that's tied in here is I've always been fascinated with the universe and black matter and this and that. And it's funny because the one thing that I am trying to write on the side right now, and if I ever finish it, if it's ever worth anything, I'll submit it and then have them reject me, is I'm writing like a little Silver Surfer arc, because I've always loved the Silver Surfer.
Oh, cool.
I've always been fascinated by his character in Marvel Comics, and I think there's a very dark aspect to that story that he's gone through, and not just like the loss of of his love and Zenla and all that. It's about that journey and that path, So that's something way down the road. I gotta focus on what I'm doing now and hopefully make this story as best as possible. And I hope people keep backing it. We've had great success. knock on wood, we've had great feedback, and I just hope that it keeps going.
Perfect. And once again, so I do want to recap. I'll have had it come up, but if people want to follow you, where's the best place to do it?
Instagram. So Instagram. I'm not great on all social medias outside of Instagram. I try to be really active on Instagram. It's Cheesy Comics Shop. So cheesy, like I smile a lot. That was a nickname when I was a kid. Cheese. People used to call me Cheese because I smile too much. So Cheesy Comics and then shop. And Perfect. I've got my link tree on there and so on. And if people are interested in buying back issues, I can sell those, get them ship out with Gemini bindings and all that. Well, that's one thing too. When we ship your product, we do everything possible to make sure that thing's going to arrive perfect. And if there's ever any issues, we have no problems just shipping out another one, because that's the one thing when you're trying to put out a product. I mean, my biggest thing is I'm trying to give the readers the best quality product that they can receive, whether in the printing, the paper, the colors, and as you mentioned, it's the black and whites on the inside, and just what goes on, and I just want to make sure that people get their value. I don't have astronomical prices on there. I think the comic is like $13 or something, but that's because shipping and so on. But if you get it directly from me, it's a little bit cheaper than the Kickstarter, but the Kickstarter is there to raise the funds, so that way I can pay these artists, and I can pay for printing, and I can pay these other people.
Yes, definitely pay your artists. Yeah, it's I don't think people understand how expensive art is, and that develops skill. Because
why did I stop drawing when I was a kid? I used to draw when I was a kid. Why did I stop?
Yeah, no, you know what? It's interesting because I definitely feel like people don't understand. I won't say that there isn't such a thing as like inborn talent, but it whatever factor of like an inherent ability someone has, practice will beat the hell out of that every single time. And just when you see an amazing artist out there, no matter what medium it is, but for the sake of the show, an amazing comic artist, support them, pay them what they're asking, don't barter with them about it. Because they've earned that skill. They've built that. Just like writers do.
I love my artists. I mean, I just, the best part of this aspect of what I've this world I've fallen into in indie comics. I mean, I love them, appreciate the hell out of all of them. And I just want to keep throwing money at them and have them stay with me. I'm prostituting my artists to be with me. I'm paying them to love me.
Then Robert, you know what? We've kind of covered all the details. We've covered the campaign, when it starts. I did want to ask. I did check, and I probably should have. Do you have out one of those pre-campaign notify me pages out? Beautiful.
Yeah. So, if you go to Instagram, go to my link tree, you can click on the notify me launch. I think we've got I think 20, 30 people on there so far. I've just been very vocal there. Scott Oakley, he's on it. He's on Twitter. He's on TikTok. He's on Instagram. He's also pushing it. I mean, we're hoping. We really want to get something big with this issue because it's been somewhat tight. But I really want to. I'm not going to stop on this journey. I mean, I will keep putting out comics. It's just the Kickstarters really make it a lot easier for us to really keep it going and make things bigger and better, because that's the one thing too. Once we get over goal, then that's when all the rewards kick in, and that's when we can start giving goodies back. And we think we've got a great logo. We think we've got some cool things to work with. So cups, T-shirts, things like that. I mean, I would love. I mean, that's the whole thing. I'd love to have extra money just to make cool stuff to give away to people and ship it out to them. I mean, it'd be awesome.
Hell yeah! No, you know what? I love when that gets to happen.
Big time.
Yeah. So yeah, we've covered a whole bunch. So a little bit of time for some fun stuff. So Robert, as I can see behind you, you are very clearly a collector. Often comics creators are. So one question I like to ask is, if you could show me one thing that summarized your collection for you, maybe not the most valuable, maybe not the most rare, but the thing that when you see it, you go, that makes me happy. What is that thing for you?
That's a good question. I'm going to show you the first one I got, and this was at a New York Comic Con. I ordered it online, and it's Spidey. And let's see if I can get that in there really well. And this was like an exclusive that you could order online. He's got his little hat on, and he's got like his little winter weather. And I bought way too many of these. I've got Thor behind me over here. I've got Venom. I've got Agent Venom. I've got Cosmic Ghost Rider. I've got Thanos. What I just ordered right now, which is hilarious. I got Chainsaw Man. I just loved it.
Cool.
I like some anime stuff. So it's all these little figures, and so this is embarrassing, but the fan in my office, the fan and the light don't work. So I've got a light here to kind of light things up, and you can see all my little dudes here. I don't know why I started collecting Funko so much, but I need to stop that because I got way too many of them. But here's Thor, and this is off of Ryan. I think it's Ryan. Not Ryan Stegman. Who was the other one who drew Thor? That was doing it with Jason Aaron. That's his illustration created that Thor there. I've got Thor up here on the wall. I got Thor Ragnarok. I've got Spider-Man Far From Home. I've got Wonder Woman. I've got an original Flash Gordon poster up over here, but I can't show you because everything's dark. I got a Guardians of the Galaxy. I love the world, the good and the bad movies and the great movies. I watch them all. I'm a big movie fanatic. Love all the TV shows. Actually, the greatest thing that's happened to me recently is I was never a big gamer. Not because I don't like gaming, because back then you had to have really good thumbs, and my thumbs suck. So I just was never good at gaming. But obviously, The Last of Us is incredible. But still to this day, the one thing that I just like, if you ever said, "Hey, Robert, what do you wish you could turn Retribution into?" It would be an Arcane style animated show. Ooh. Arcane to me is one of the greatest things I've seen ever. I knew League of Legends. I mean, I'd heard of it, never played it, never even knew anything about the characters. But what they were able to create with that show was phenomenal. Oh, yeah. I mean, it's just awesome. So that's kind of my work for the writers out there. A little Stan Lee here. Hello.
Oh, Stan I love it.
Stan the man. He sits on the desk even while I'm working. He's out here. So yeah, just all my little. I always call my little friends. I say in Spanish, my little monitos, which means all my little figures. They're all out here keeping me company all day long.
I love it. Well, Robert, please keep on being nerdy. My last question that I always like to ask is simple, I hope. Simply speaking, what do you want the folks out there to know?
I want them to know that just enjoy the ride, enjoy the story, be open to the way other people tell stories. Don't expect, but accept, like really try to look at things through the other person's point of view, because I think with so many stories I've read and so many things that I never think I'm going to like, and I go out there and I watch it like Arcane, and I'm just flabbergasted by just how great it is. So just be open to living through somebody else's experiences or through somebody else's journey and story.
Damn. All right. I like that. Thank you for sharing that. That's awesome, Robert. Thank you. It's so cool asking that question, because so many people, I expect a lot of people to go, oh, back to Kickstarter, check out my comics, blah, blah, blah. And, selfish promo all day long. Do it. Sell your comic, get successful. Hell yeah. But an astounding number of people that I ask that question to, they come out with something that is just so heartfelt and wonderful. And you've added to that in an exquisite way. Cool. So thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Konrad. Thank you so much.
Oh, absolutely. So yeah, Robert, thanks for taking the time to come on the show tonight. It was wonderful to speak with you.
Hey, I have been on Wednesday Night Reviews. I've done it.
Awesome. And for the folks out there in YouTube land, like, comment, subscribe, click the first link down below, which will direct you to the Kickstarter that you can back now. And let me know what you thought of Robert, and hope you have a great rest of your day.
Golden age to present, digest to oversize. Never miss new comic day, yeah, no surprise. So where's my no prize? Check the letter columns. Can't find issue 2? Yeah, collector problems, cliffhangers, mysteries, you need answers. When did Batman become Green Lantern? I get it, true believer, not lying. Always up for an awesome summer crossover.